Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, April 9th, 2026. It's 7:09 a.m. In the morning. That's why I sound a little tired and everything too. But also I want to try to be a little quiet at times because, it's spring break and you know how that is. For those of you that have been following me, for the almost past 18 years this June. It'll be 18 years this June. But I wanted to come on here and I wanted to talk about something really interesting. I didn't get a chance to talk about it last night because I wanted to just get what I had done and just rest up a little bit. But I'm sure you've heard by now, and I'm guaranteeing you, almost certainly, people like JD from NY206, Coach and Vince Russo, and then later on Coach and JD on this upcoming Tuesday, and then maybe even maybe even JD and Solomon on Tuesday night. And I'm sure Solomon will talk about this on the crowd either today, if not if not if I'm recording this by now, he's talking about it. But I'm guaranteeing you they'll talk about it on Tuesday because what happened initially here with this news is something that, if I'm going to be honest, I kind of knew was going to happen the moment I saw one of the first matches announced. I see, just drinking some Mountain Dew. Now you see, basically, when WrestleMania happens, no matter what the location is, next year being maybe an exception, whenever WrestleMania takes place or emanates from a certain city or region, here in North America, a lot of, smaller companies, indie companies, like to come together and have shows within the same facility, if not basically all throughout the region. And in this case, since WWE is going back to Las Vegas for WrestleMania 42, of course, you're going to have a lot of minor companies, no, I wouldn't say minor companies, but mid to smaller companies, promotions here in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, internationally, like TJPW and so on. You're going to have more coming together, Rev Pro from UK, all coming together to, take part in this event, take part in this in the festivities, if you will. And basically, long story short, we can get to it. Because again, it's early. I don't want to delay too much here. But long story short, one of the things that we saw, being advertised, basically, was WrestleCon. WrestleCon is one of the events that takes place primarily during WrestleMania weekend. Sometimes it happens later on during the summer, during SummerSlam weekend and all that, but it's mostly a WrestleMania weekend staple. And it's during WrestleMania, that WrestleMania weekend, that is, that WrestleCon will have certain matchups that might happen only once in a while, independently, unless, let's say, a major promotion gets both talents, and then they do it there. And one of these matches that they had listed, if you will, trying to make sure I get the time right so that when you see this, you'll understand. One of the matches listed, and you see it right here for a little past the 4-minute mark, was Leon Slater versus Ricochet. Now, normally in the past, this wouldn't be an issue, right? Two high flyers, one basically looked at as the future of pro wrestling at his age of 21 years young. Ricochet, with his experience, still being able to go and do what he does. And WrestleCon decided, as part of the memorial show that they were doing, I think it was the Matt Hitchcock Memorial Show, that they were going to put these two together against each other, right? Well, honestly, and I'm being honest about this, swear to God, swear on the Bible kind of deal. When I saw this announced, something told me personally, honestly, something told me in my heart and in my mind, this match ain't gonna happen. And the reason I said this match ain't going to happen between Ricochet and Leon Slater wasn't because, maybe they'd have different schedules that might prevent them from having it happen. They might, they might have, conflicting, bookings within that region and all that, to where, they can't get to the venue on time, or whatever the case might be, or they might have a flight delay, or whatever the situation. It's not because of that. It's not because of any of that. No. The moment I noticed it was announced, I knew honestly it was not going to happen because of TNA's partnership with WWE. That's right. WWE, let's be honest, has a lot more say and influence on, on TNA than TNA and WWE and TKO and Anthem Sports, all of them want to admit to. They do. So the moment I saw this match announced, I'm like, yeah, this ain't going to happen. This is pretty much going to be canceled. It's going to be ex-nayed, if you will. And it was. It was. Because over the past 24 hours, 48 hours, or whatever, reports have been coming out that Carlos Silva, the president of TNA, along with other people in TNA and other, I guess, influencers, aka WWE, if you will, more than certain in my opinion, I'm sure I'm not the only one that believes that, pretty much, put the kibosh on that match happening. And they also put the kibosh on another match that's supposed to happen in May. It was supposed to be at the Creator Pro Wrestling event. And originally it was going to be MJF, the current AEW champion, going against Nic Nemeth, the former Dolph Ziggler. Well, that match got kiboshed. However, the catch is both men will still be competing in the show. But instead of facing each other, they're going to have Maxwell Jacob Friedman, excuse me. They're going to have him come out and issue an open challenge. Well, Nic Nemeth will go one-on-one with fellow TNA star Bear Bronson. So, yeah. Basically, as that old saying goes, cards subject to change. Well, these are just two recent examples of that actually happening. And again, in the past, you would think this wouldn't be an issue, right? This would not be, an issue whatsoever of happening. But again, when you have certain parties as your partners, and they have the reach that they have in everything in the business, they have connections in places you may not know of or aware of. Of course, if they come to you and say, yeah, don't make that match happen, because, we were in a competition with AEW and all that and so on. If you're TNA and these people could pretty much, make a deal right under your nose with Anthem, them and TKO, to buy you out or buy a portion of ownership in your company out. You think, honestly, you want to take a chance to make them angry by letting these matches happen? No, you don't. No, you don't. Also, there's another factor, too. There's another factor as well. That other factor is the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that in recent months, both Nic Nemeth as Dolph Ziggler in Madison Square Garden for Monday Night Raw, not this past Monday, if you will, at MSG, or not 2 weeks ago, I should say, at MSG, but late last year when they were in MSG, Nic Nemeth as Dolph Ziggler made his return as part of the Last Time Is Now tournament, and just as recently as about February, I think, early March, they had Leon Slater, the current X Division champion, answer answer the open challenge against Kamalo Hayes for the U.S. Championship on SmackDown. So if you think, and on top of that, they had Leon Slater teaming up with Javon Evans on Saturday night's main event in the tag match on the Saturday night's main event, which was, Cena's last official match, official wrestling event, WWE-wise, as an in-ring competitor. So basically, if you think WWE is going to allow Leon, someone who's a very high on, and I'm basically hoping that when his his contract is up, they can nab him to be part of their company. If you think they're going to let him, and if you think they're going to let an alumni who just recently made a one-time return to the company as part of the Last Time It's Now tournament in MSG of all places, if you think they're going to let them, even though they're under TNA contract, go up against AEW talent with the possibility that AEW talent could be booked to go over them, if you think WWE's going to allow TNA to do that, heck, then you got to be, then you got to be not, you obviously got to be thinking, something else. So obviously you got to be fantasizing in your mind, that Ricochet is going to lose to Leon, or MJF is going to lose to Nic Nemeth. You got to be thinking, you got to be thinking hallucinatedly, of that possibility, because that ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. The Leon one is more possible, I will admit that, but the MJF Nic Nemeth one, you know exactly where that's going to go booking wise. So if you think they're just about to allow that to happen, to talent that, one, made the return even for a one-time situation as part of that Last Time It's Now tournament, that's honoring, helped to honor one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time in their eyes, John Cena. If you think they're about to let him, and then someone, a young prospect who is currently the youngest X Division champ in TNA history, someone pretty much, like I say, they got their eye on. If you think they're going to let them compete in, neutral rings, if you will, against AEW talent, you out of your mind. You got to be hallucinating, if you will, or you got to be high on something. Now, there are reports coming out that the reason for this is because TNA, mostly Carl Silva, they're not sure how their talent will be treated, whether their talent will be treated fairly, and they'll be able to, maybe have a draw or something like that, or whatever the case may be, or if they lose, they get counted out or disqualified, or whatever the case is. They're not sure how their talent's going to be treated fairly, if at all. They're worried about that. And or something to an extent. It's basically the reports are that, basically the reports are TNA, Anthem Sports are unsure how the talent that's under contract to them is going to be showcased. And like I said, booked and, presented and stuff like that, and so on. How they're going to be treated. And I know a lot of people, and rightfully so, are going to come out and say that's a bunch of, bobbycock, a bunch of bullshit. Excuse my language, God. I know a lot of people are going to come out and say that because you know what? It is. It is a bunch of bullshit. It is a bunch of poppycock and bobbycock or bullcock or whatever you want to call it. They are going to come out and say that because it's true. It's true. Because last year, if I remember right, TNA had some events, or TNA had an event around WrestleMania weekend. Well, they set them to that extent. And they allowed their talents to compete against other talents, even those from AEW. So there was no issue there. But what I'm looking at, ironically, is the talent that they're canceling, or they're getting these matches canceled for, is talent that they've recently been having on their show. Mostly someone like Leon Slater. Nic Nemeth is not an issue, but him coming back as Dolph Ziggler, Madison Square Garden, as part of the Last Time It's Now tournament to see who would have faced John Cena in Saturday Night's Main Event. Yeah, you take all those into equation, and if basically they weren't involved, if they weren't involved in such big ways in recent months, especially on WWE's primary television of Raw, SmackDown, Saturday Night's Main Event, and NXT to an extent, if they weren't showcased and featured in that manner, I don't think it would have been an issue. And I know people will be bringing up, well, wait a minute, they let Natalya compete on NWA against Kenzie Page for the NWA Women's Championship, as Natty, what we're seeing now, why not, but the deal they had was that match couldn't be televised. Why couldn't they do the same here? And that's a good question. That's a good question. And the reason for it is because these would have been showcased. These would have been seen, on television. That's the whole scenario. These would have been shown. These would have been seen on television. Or not television, but they would have been seen on something like Thriller TV or IWTV, and so on. They would have been shown. People would have seen them. And yeah, people people that would have been attending would have seen them and maybe filmed it with the cameras. But, from a broadcast perspective, they would have been seen on Thriller. They would have been seen on IWTV and so on. And if you think WWE wants that to be seen in front of the world, well, somebody basically like a potential WWE future superstar in Leon Slater is going to maybe go to a draw or, get pinned, cheated out of a victory over Ricochet. If you think that's going to happen, if you think they're going to let that happen, you're wrong. You're wrong. Because they're not going to let that happen. Same with Dolph Ziggler and Nic Nemeth. They have a lot of respect for that guy. That guy basically came back as Dolph Ziggler and said, hey, I'll be part of this, last time it's now tournament because of his history with John Cena. And basically, he went out there and had a great match against Solo. He did. And if you think WWE is going to let somebody that they might want to bring back in the future again, maybe let him be Nic Nemeth, like, they've done with Zack Ryder, now being Matt Cardona, if you think they're going to, let him, suffer a loss and everything, to MJF, the AEW World Champion, if you think they're going to let that happen, you got another thought coming. You got something else, you got something else not, really registering in that mind of yours. Because they're not going to let that happen. They're not about to let that happen. And I know people might say, well, TNA is their own, company. They should be able to book, allow and, their talent to, go and be booked in these, shows and everything against AEW talent and so on. And that's true. That's true. But, but here's the thing. Last year, Leon wasn't showcased as much as he is now. He wasn't looked at in a high pedestal way as he is now by WWE. Nic Nemeth wasn't involved in anything major to where he had to cross over with WWE and basically compete, on WWE television. None of that was happening at that time. And in recent months, though, it has. So there's your factor. And anybody else that could be crossing over, the TNA, crossing the line, if you will, from the TNA side of television side of things to WWE. Any one of them. Any one of them could potentially, and I mean potentially, any one of them could potentially be prevented. And it's early. I do apologize if I sound and act a little tired and and all that. I'm still waking up, but anybody that's crossed the line before, will not be allowed. Honestly, they will not be allowed to compete against any talent from AEW, any talent, let's say, from Rev Pro or MLP, Maple Leaf Pro. MLW might be an exception. That might be the exception because that promotion is like I believe right in the middle. They are. But like Rev Pro, who's associated with AEW to an extent. Maple Leaf associated with AEW to an extent, if not firmly in bed, if you will. CMLL, any of those talents. Let's say a Leon Slater got booked against somebody from any one of those areas. That match is going to be canceled because of those companies' associations with All Elite Wrestling. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I think honestly it's stupid. Because they are their own, they are their own company, and these are individual TNA Anthem Sports contracted talents that have been allowed in the past to go and compete, independently and everything. And last year proved that. But honestly, I think the more this partnership with WWE grows, and the more exposure it gives, whether it's on NXT, on Netflix, or even SmackDown or Saturday Night's Main Event or pay-per-views, the more exposure they're allowing, these TNA talents, contracted talents to have, the more that's going to prevent, these talents from competing, if you will, against other major promotions talents, even on a neutral independent site like Wrestlecon on WrestleMania Weekend. Because the thing is, if they let that happen, as I guess the reports coming out, they're not sure how certain talent might be showcased, treated, or booked, or visualized. They're not sure about that. They're not sure if, they'll agree to do a draw, agree to have said talent counted out or disqualified. They're not sure. They're not sure because they don't trust, they don't trust AEW. And these are AEW contracted wrestlers they would have gone against. So they don't trust the influence Tony Khan could have. Which is why I'm certain someone at WWE, TKO, they reached out to Anthem Sports, to Carlos Silva, and said, hey, put the kibosh on these matches. Put the kibosh on these matches, put the kibosh on any other future matches that TNA talent might have against other non-contracted TNA talent or, contracted AEW talent. Put the kibosh again, on them, because we're not about to let you guys, use our potential future talent that we have our eyes on to bring in for the first, bring in full time, or even bring back full time or semi full time. We're not about to let you have them get humiliated because we don't trust, how the booker for Creator Pro or WrestleCon, could or could not be influenced by Tony Khan and his money and everything to book his talent strong. And again, that's that word right there is the main reason. They're not sure how strong their talent would be booked, or that talent would be booked. So I'm almost certain WWE and TKO had a say in this. Almost certain. And it came probably as far up as Nick Khan and Triple H. Maybe Shapiro to an extent. But I think, mostly the hierarchy is Nick Khan and Triple H. That's where I think it came from. Honestly. I really do. I really do. But yeah, it's just stupid that this is going on. I mean, yeah, it's stupid. There's a lot of people that are not happy about this. There's a lot of folks that are like, are you kidding? Excuse me, I almost dropped my phone. But there's a lot of people, from a JD, from a Just Alex, that are like, this is so stupid. This is so dumb. Why are you preventing this from happening? And again, it's mainly because of the association with AEW. That's what it is. It's the talent association with AEW. If Ricochet just wanted to be, an independent guy, not contracted at all, freelance and all that, it'd be a different story. That's almost guaranteed. Same with MJF. If MJF wasn't the world champion for All Elite Wrestling, and he too wanted to be non-contractual and just do his own thing, not be committed to anybody, different story. But because of the association, the contracted situation, with AEW, that's what's preventing these matches from happening. And again, like I said, the other reason is that these talents that were advertised for these matches, they had recently been on WWE television. Like I said, Leon Slater, as early as February of this year, against Kamala Hayes. Dolph Ziggler's part of the last time it's now, tournament. You think honestly, excuse me there, you think honestly that, they're just going to allow these guys that have been recently on SmackDown and Raw and Saturday Night's Main Event, you think they're going to allow them to, compete, in these matches against these AEW talents, with the risk that these AEW talents could be booked to go over them? You're out of your mind. Again, you're out of your mind. And WWE obviously doesn't want that to happen because they're high on someone like Leon. And also, there's a good chance Tony Khan could be, in their minds and other people's minds, petty enough to say, book Ricochet strong to win over Leon, or book MJF dominant over Nic Nemeth to win at Creator Pro. They don't trust him. They don't trust, like I said earlier, the influence he could have. So that's why they're putting the kibosh on it. Yeah, again, is it stupid? Absolutely. people want to work, people want to put on dream matches, go against dream opponents, you need to let them. Because it might be the only time it happens. It might be the only time that happens. But again, it's the trust factor. They don't trust the influence Tony Khan could have over the people that are running said promotions and event. He doesn't. The WWE don't trust him. TKO don't trust him. If you know what I mean. So yeah, like I said earlier, at the beginning, when I saw that this match between Leon and Ricochet had been booked for WrestleCon during WrestleMania weekend, I said to myself, it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen, and guess what? It's not. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that had that feeling. I'm sure I'm not the only one that had that belief that this match wasn't going to happen. And guess what? That belief became a reality. So I think we just got to look at it this way. Until AEW and Tony Khan, are at least given some sense that, hey, if you're going to want to book your talent, allow your talent to be booked against maybe talent that, is close to WWE via TNA or something like that, then you got to make sure that, you're willing to agree to maybe a draw or something like that to, make sure everybody goes home happy, if you will. There's no making one look bad over the other, until that day comes, we may never see this kind of stuff, because that's, again, what WWE, Triple H, Nick Khan, and even maybe by extension Carl Silver worries about, is that, that situation. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on this whole new development and everything. I'd love to hear from you guys, and until next time, I am out.